real chance to act ahead. So don't delay. Your future may depend on it. Call 718-615-0123 to learn more. That's 718-615-0123. Or visit freetoprosper.com today.
Join me, Joe Joseph, and my co-hosts John King and A.C. Griffith, Thursdays and Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Freedomlink Radio's Bridging the Gap on the Intel Hub Radio Network.
We're ready for another edition of the King's Court, so John King, take it away.
Thank you, Joe. Where have all the good men gone? I sit here knowing the economy will collapse and we're on the verge of all hell on earth, and I think to myself that only 3% of the colonists fought the revolution that started this country. We were warned that if the banksters ever got control of their country through inflation and deflation, our children would wake up slaves in the country that they had founded. Well, the payment on the national debt as of today is a little over $13.5 trillion. And the U.S. Treasury Department's report to Congress, the U.S. debt to rise to $19.6 trillion by 2015. Our gross domestic product is $900 billion with a B. The debt is no longer able to be paid back. You do the math. We are now debt slaves to a private international banking organization called the International Monetary Fund, through our main privately held, not federal, but privately held Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is printing more money to pay the debt, and the U.S. is still borrowing more. The U.S. lenders are aware of that the U.S. has extended their credit, and some have cut off the credit line of the U.S. Now, what happens? I went past the gas station and noticed gasoline has risen 10 cents. That's no big deal. Gas often rises and falls. No alarm there. I went to Walmart and bought some genetically modified corn syrup in carbonated water. You know it better as soda pop. I noticed that prices are starting to rise. $7.79 for a 5-quart pitcher of ice cream, $2 for a loaf of bread. Even the discount warehouses for the off-brands are starting to go up. Austerity measures are coming, folks, here to the United States, and they're going to be swift and very unpleasant. Look at what's going on in Europe. Spain rioting, France, England, and Ireland, just to name a few. I sit here, and I don't fear for myself. I know my capabilities. I worry about you, the one that didn't stock up and save supplies. Now you're cold and desperate, and people will kill for a mouthful of food. It's happened before. Is it a coincidence that Walmart's going to be selling guns this year just in time for the Christmas shopping season? If a riot breaks out, people will be headed for the 52-inch widescreen TVs. But what's really important will be in the sporting goods sections. Those TVs will look real nice on their wall when there's no electricity to power them. But they will make a great conversation piece, and they can tell those who come to loot them at gunpoint how their high-definition plasma stereo surround sound looks. You see, after the food supply trucks stop running and the docks go empty with no one to unload all the fruits and vegetables from South America, your local grocery store has about 3 days' worth of food. And that's about if it all goes down civil. But there never has been a collapse in any country that's been civil. So I estimate it to be about 3 hours. Don't believe me? Then the next welfare food stamp day, go to your local grocery store and just stand around and experience the mayhem for yourself. And then multiply the carnage you just saw by about a factor of 10,000. because the people that are running around then are going to be extremely angry and possibly armed with one thing on their mind, me, and their survival train of thought will be in high gear, and you do not enter into the equation at all. So where are all these brave men, like the ones that fought the first revolution? They've been made mute by video games and football. They have been made effeminate by liberal upbringing into accepting the gay lifestyle. And they have been made into metrosexuals and neutered. It has been suggested that there are 10 million militia men and women in this country. That may be so. But do we have the men with the right kind of men, the men with the fortitude and principles, and men with big enough kahunas that they can stand up to authority and put them on the line? Or do we have men that will drop their arms because their mascara is running? Only time will tell, and may history favor the brave. Joe and Griff, over to you.
Thank you, John. Folks, we're joined tonight by John Moore. He's a radio host over here on Intel Hub Radio Network. Also, the author of the presentation, Global Warming, What the Government Isn't Telling You. John, how's it going tonight?
Outstanding. Good to be with you.
Oh, very good. And John, we've got a good friend of ours, Henning Kemner, who's done a ton of research into the Gulf of Mexico and has some interesting news to give tonight on the Gulf of Mexico, to couple with the information that you have about the Gulf Stream. So it should be a good hour of radio here. And Henning, I want to start off with you. Henning, what do you got? What's the latest that you've done as far as your research is concerned, and where is it leading you?
Oh, well, it actually leads me to, what I tried to get a little away from, and that is this doom and gloom. I have a friend on YouTube called Christiana Garrett, and she's from United Kingdom, and she drops some gold nuggets on my lab once in a while of information, and she did this 2 days ago, and I went into research on it, and what I found out is that this so-called Gulf oil spill, it's I would say it's 1,000 times fold much worse than any of us can possibly imagine. That is the fact.
Well, what did you find in your research?
I found out that the leak is not where the Deepwater Horizon went down. The leak is actually 7 miles southwest on the so-called Biloxi Dome, which is an ancient asphalt volcano. And there are 7 leaks, which is gushing volcanic material and crude oil. And I did a little calculation on it. It seems like that there was an oil exploration at the Biloxi Dome in February, and it went all wrong already there. And now they have 7 leaks. I don't know how they managed to do that, and drilling into a volcano, which they in the first place did know were there, and still there. And it's 30 miles wide, that volcano. It is not a little one. It's a mountain down at the bottom, basically.
Well, John, just hold on one second, Henning. John, now you've done some research into this also, and now are you of the opinion that this has something to do with the Gulf Stream slowing down or stopping?
Well, my opinion doesn't count for much. I'm a homicide detective, not a scientist, but the scientists that we've been talking to, yes, they do believe that. First of all, it might be good to begin at the beginning.
Sure.
The Gulf Stream is warm water that comes up the east coast of the United States from the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. It goes north on the east coast until it gets to about Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, where it starts going east. Up until June 12th this year, it continued east to the British Isles, where it split and some went north, warming up Scandinavia. The rest went south, warming up the British Isles and the coast of France, Spain, and Portugal. On June 12th, that stopped. We've known for more than 10 years, probably 15 plus years, that the Gulf Stream was getting more and more fragile and more at risk of stopping. In my paper, Night for Panic, published in the fall of 2005,
I stated the following, that the scientists had announced on November 27th, 2005, that the Gulf Stream had lost 30% of its mass and velocity, and that was based on calculations that were using figures 2 years old then. So it's been at risk and very fragile. The same scientists in 2005 were estimating 5 to 20 years for it to stop. Well, it was 5.5 years, and it did stop. Now here comes the oil. University-level science experiments have been done a number of times where they take a large clear tank, maybe 60, 100 feet long, maybe 10 by 10 feet, with fairly cold salt water, the same salinity as the Atlantic Ocean, and inject in one end fairly warm salt water, the same salinity, but with color in it, so they could see it move through the colder water, duplicating what the Gulf Stream does. When you put oil or core exit or both in there, it breaks down a thermal barrier between the warm water and the cold water to start mixing. There's a good possibility that the British petroleum oil spill and the core exit combine to break the back of a very already fragile Gulf Stream and cause it to come to a stop. I've published a paper on this. I believe, Joe, you got a copy of it?
Yes, sir.
And the paper will be published on my website soon. It's already published at ruralsurvival.info. Of course, you're welcome to publish it any place you want, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
But there's citations in there giving the science. There's links to the United States Navy images of the ocean, especially the North Atlantic, and the temperatures of the ocean. And it's one image has a big yellow arrow pointing to where the Gulf Stream stops, about 200 miles east of Cape Hatteras. So there's lots of real science involving this, and a scientist named Luigiani Gonzari. He's an Italian scientist who we interviewed on Genesis a couple of times before somebody got to him and shut him up around the end of July.
Yeah, we haven't heard from him since.
No, they haven't heard from him since. And what's funny, Henning, our guys down in the Gulf, the Project Gulf Impact guys, got hospitalized because they were poisoned, hydrocarbon poisoning, and it's happening all over the place. So of course it's not over. And one thing I would like to add, folks, and to you too, Henning, is that Corexit is more volatile or more poisonous to humans the more diluted it is. I bet you didn't know that. Or if you did know that.
Yeah, I did know that.
Yeah.
Especially
basically
when it gets mixed with the crude oil.
Well, what it does is it sneaks below the radar. If that parts per million count is low enough, it'll sneak below the radar of your immune system and actually and be able to do some pretty serious damage. And that's what's happening down there. It's awful. Yeah,
we have DNA mutations in marine life now due to this pollution.
Mm-hmm.
So that already speaks for itself. What will happen to humans? We are also comprised of DNA and amino acids, just like the marine life is. So we will get affected in some way or another. What it's going to be, I really don't know, but I suspect mutations too.
Right. And I mean,
that sounds plausible.
Look at the fish kills too. I said it last hour.
It's staggering.
It is, and I mean, it goes all the way up the coast.
I have some numbers I would like to give you all.
By all means, go ahead.
NOAA has a PDF file. I have that on my latest upload. I just uploaded 2 videos about this subject called Biloxidome, the 7 geysers. I call them that because they look like geysers. NOAA has discovered that there is a 22-mile long plume of oil floating down at 2/3 of a mile. 22-mile long. And I did a calculation just to give me a picture of what are we looking at. And I took the 22 miles, and I took just as an example 5 miles wide plume. And in this case, what I could see on the graphs I was sitting with, that the plume was approximately 50 feet thick. So that is a huge area, which is only oil, nothing but oil. And in cubic feet, I came up to something like, I'm not good with numbers, I'm afraid, but I could calculate it.